The ranger slid a faded photograph across the desk toward me. I stopped breathing the moment I saw their faces. It was them. The couple who had walked into my campsite late last night, as if they had stepped straight out of the darkness. "They disappeared 25 years ago," he said quietly. "Never found. No bodies, no clues. When I saw them yesterday, they looked exactly the same as in this photograph. Not a day older, not a single wrinkle, not a trace of time. How was that even possible? What kind of hell had I stumbled into in the Appalachian backcountry? And it all began just yesterday." I reached the ridge just before sunset, October air sharp enough to sting my lungs. I always camp in the Appalachians this time of year, after the bugs die off, after the crowds vanish, when the mountains feel empty in a way that makes you think they're yours alone. Usually the silence feels like a relief, a reset button. But yesterday, when I stepped out of my truck and listened to the trees creak in the wind, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like the woods were holding their breath. I set up my tent, gathered some fallen branches, and got a fire going. Flames clawed upward, warm and steady, throwing long shadows across the clearing. I cooked a simple meal, just a bit of meat sizzling in a pan, and the smell mixed with the smoke in that familiar, comforting way I'd missed for months. For a moment, everything felt normal, safe even. Then I saw the light. A thin streak of white slid between the trees, gliding low to the ground, not jerking like a flashlight beam, not drifting like a lantern. It moved with intent, smooth, silent, too deliberate. It vanished the second I focused on it. I sat up straighter, every instinct tightening in my chest. Probably a hunter, I told myself, or another camper heading back. But my skin prickled. The kind of warning you can't explain, only feel. I tried to shake it off, took a long sip of bourbon, and then came the voices. At first, just a faint murmur, carried by the wind. Then a woman's laugh, bright, too bright, cut through the trees. A man's voice followed, low and steady. Their footsteps approached in slow, synchronized crunches through the underbrush. I froze, suddenly wishing the fire wasn't so loud, so visible. Two figures emerged into the glow. A woman in her early 30s, eyes wide with a cheerful energy that felt almost forced. She smiled instantly, waving like we were long-lost friends. And beside her, tall, silent, stiff, was the man. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach knot. He wasn't judging me. He was studying me. "Hi there," the woman chirped. "We saw your fire and thought we'd come say hello. Our tent's down the slope." She talked fast, words spilling out with a strange, restless excitement. He didn't even glance at her. He kept his gaze on me, scanning my hands, my boots, my gear, cataloging me in detail. I forced a grin and lifted my cup. "Evening. Want some bourbon?" Her eyes lit up instantly. "Absolutely. God, it's freezing. Right, Daniel?" But the man, Daniel, remained silent. Not a nod, not a blink. We sat by the fire for nearly 2 hours. Or rather, she talked and he watched. She jumped from story to story while he tracked my every move, every gesture, every flicker of expression. It felt less like a conversation and more like an interview I hadn't agreed to. When they finally stood to leave, something was wrong. There was no crunch of leaves, no fading footsteps, Just a sudden silence, as if someone had slammed a door on the sound itself. The dark swallowed them whole. The night immediately grew colder, unnaturally cold, like their presence had been holding back the chill. Later, zipped inside my tent, I tried to force myself to sleep. That's when I heard it. A woman's laugh, soft, close, the exact same laugh she'd used hours before. It came from just inches outside the tent wall. I tore open the flap and shone my flashlight into the trees. Nothing. Just the empty woods staring back at me. I must have slept eventually, though I don't remember drifting off. One moment, I was staring at the nylon ceiling of my tent, listening to the wood strain against the wind. The next, I was choking. At first, I thought it was panic, a nightmare. Then the pressure tightened. 2 hands, cold, strong, clamped around my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My eyes snapped open and he was there, inches from my face. Daniel. His expression was blank, but his strength was monstrous. His fingers dug into my neck, veins bulging along his arms like cords pulled too tight. His eyes, bloodshot, furious, stared into mine with a focus that felt inhuman. I tried to raise my arms, to push him off, but my limbs were heavy, paralyzed, as if the dream itself pinned me down. Behind him, at the entrance of the tent, she stood, the woman, smiling. Her laugh, soft and chiming, echoed inside my skull. Though her lips barely moved, it didn't feel like a dream, not even close. I felt the dirt under my palms, the cold air on my skin, the crushing panic of fading breath. Just when the world started to dim, a flash of white exploded across my vision. I lurched upward, gasping, tearing at my sleeping bag. My hands clawed at my throat, but there was nothing there. No bruises, no marks, only sweat and the icy, shaking panic of someone who'd been seconds from blacking out. For a long moment, I just sat there, hunched, breathing in ragged, broken pulls. Then I heard it, a branch snapping. Not far, not small. I forced myself outside. The night was still dark, but dawn wasn't far. My flashlight beam cut through the clearing, and that's when my stomach twisted. The ground around my tent was a mess of footprints. Not animal, human. 2 sets, fresh, deep. They circled the tent, crossed over themselves, then stopped right beside the entrance. As if someone, or 2 someones, had stood watching me sleep. My pulse hammered in my throat. I didn't try to pack neatly. I ripped stakes out of the ground, shoved gear into the truck bed, barely caring where anything landed. The woods felt wrong, charged, waiting. Every time a twig snapped, I spun around, expecting to see one of them standing there, smiling, as if the nightmare had followed me out into the cold. When I finally slammed the truck door and started the engine, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely grip the wheel. The forest thinned as I drove down the mountain road, but the feeling of being watched didn't fade, not even when the morning sun finally broke over the ridge. At one point, glancing into the rearview mirror, I could have sworn I saw movement on the slope above. 2 shapes, standing perfectly still. I didn't look again. By the time I reached the ranger station, I was lightheaded from lack of sleep and fear. I wasn't even sure how to explain what happened without sounding insane. But when my friend, someone I'd known for years, opened the door and saw my face, he didn't laugh, didn't shrug. He frowned, deeply, like he'd been waiting for exactly this. "What happened to you?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "I met a couple in the woods." His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. "A man and a woman?" he said quietly. "About your age?" I nodded. He exhaled slowly, stepped aside, and motioned me in. "Tell me everything." I stepped into the ranger's office, still trembling. He shut the door behind us and locked it twice. That told me everything I needed to know. Whatever I'd seen, he wasn't surprised. He sat across from me. "Start from the beginning." So I did. The couple, their strange behavior, the laugh outside my tent, the dream that felt like murder, the footprints. Every detail poured out of me faster than I could think. He didn't interrupt. Not once. When I finished, he exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself. "You're not the first," he said. "Another camper came through last week. Same story, same couple." My skin went ice cold. He stood, walked to a metal cabinet, and pulled out an old, nearly colorless folder. He laid it in front of me without a word. Inside were 2 photographs. It was them. The same man, the same woman, the same faces I'd seen by my fire less than 24 hours ago. "They disappeared 25 years ago," the ranger said. "Local couple. Loved camping here. One weekend, they went up the ridge and never came back. Search teams found nothing. It was like they never existed." I stared at the photos, my throat tight. "But they looked exactly like this yesterday." "I know." His voice was barely above a whisper. Silence settled between us, heavy and unmoving. Finally, he closed the folder. "Whatever happened to them up there, it didn't end normally. These mountains keep their own secrets." He nodded toward the dark window, toward the tree line that pressed close around the station. "You were lucky," he said quietly. "Most people who meet them don't realize something's wrong until it's too late. Go home, and don't come back here alone." I stood, legs unsteady. He walked me to the door. The early light outside was pale and thin, barely touching the trees. As I stepped onto the porch, a gust of wind swept across the clearing. The woods seemed still, too still. "Remember," the ranger said behind me, "in these mountains, you don't always meet the living." His words hung in the cold air, long after I reached my truck. I opened the door, and from deep within the tree line came a faint sound, soft, distant, unmistakable. A woman's laugh, the same one as last night. My hands froze on the door handle. I didn't look back.
If this story unsettled you, leave a like and let the shadows know. Subscribe for more tales you shouldn't hear after dark. And if you've seen something you can't explain, tell us in the comments. We're always listening.